Haste will be your undoing. We were caught. As the white hand wrapped around my arm, I felt everything inside me crumble and turn to dust. Only thing left was my skin and my eyes. Everything else gone. All the way from Kentucky, me and Harrison had run and run, with the Lord looking out for us the whole way, seemed like. And all the time, he had known we would be caught on the docks where the boats go to Canada. That's what I kept thinking. He just let us run and run, knowing we would be caught at the very end, standing on the dock to freedom. Harrison's head dropped to his chest, and his shoulders slumped over. I could hear him mumbling and whispering, "Bell, Bell, Bell, Bell," as they tied his hands together with a piece of rope.
"Cross your arms behind you,"
the man said sharp to Ordie Lee. "Listen, Ordie Lee, listen, listen."
"I said cross them, boy."
There was the sound of a hand cracking across Ordie Lee's face. He crumpled to the wood plank dock. I heard the snap of the rope as they knotted his hands behind him.
"Lay down on the dock,"
they told me and Harrison.
"and keep still."
They tied our feet together with one piece of rope, same as if they were tying up cordwood.
"Hope you wasn't thinking of going somewhere."
The one man leaned over us and grinned. He had a brown hat pulled low over his forehead and a chin stained yellow with tobacco. The other man had narrow, close-together eyes. Those eyes stared at us like two pieces of hard flint. "I'm gonna hunt up the constable around here," he said. "If the darkies don't have free papers, they run off from somewhere, and we'll just hand them over to the jail till we find out where." He poked his boot toe at Ordie Lee's leg. "You watch, Crane," he said. "This one'll be worth some money." The white birds cried overhead, and the boats creaked and sighed at the docks. People walked past us slow, like we were something to look at. I could hear voices talking all around us. Strange to say, some of the voices sounded sorry. A pity, I thought I heard. What a pity. Lying on the dock, I stared up at the gulls, wheeling and circling over our heads. I thought about Lily and all the trouble she had seen, and Harrison being caught and beaten for running off, and his wife, Belle, being lost forever in a card game. I thought about my mama being caught when she was a baby, and then being sold off and taken away after I was born. Seemed like all of the black folks were standing in a long, long line in my mind, waiting for me to meet trouble, same as them. "Our hard times is almost over," they whispered, "but your hard times is all ahead of you." The man who had caught us paced back and forth and told people to move on and mind their business.
"Don't you have nothing better to look at?" he would snap. "Go on with what you were doing."
Closing my eyes, I pictured me and Harrison turning ourselves into some of the white birds in the sky and flying away to freedom. I pictured the people on the docks gathering around, everyone watching us lift from the dock and fly away to Canada, just like a pair of white paper birds. And then, out of the clear blue sky, a small thought came to me. My eyes flew open. I turned my head to look over at Ordie Lee. He was lying next to me, his whole face twisted up with crying and tears. "Ordie Lee," I whispered. The boots shuffled farther off, looking at something, not noticing. "Ordie Lee," I hissed. But Ordie Lee wouldn't answer.
"Plan a way out," the riverman had said. "Haste will be your undoing."
Heels echoed loud on the dock, coming closer. The sharp-eyed man had brought the constable, a big man with black hair and earlocks down to his chin almost. Smelled strong of onions when he leaned toward us.
"Let them sit up,"
the constable said, leaning over and frowning at us.
"They ain't sheep."
I watched his eyes, the way they looked at me and Harrison and Ordie Lee lying there with our feet tied together and our hands behind us. And I saw something in his eyes. Maybe.
"They can get themselves up."
The man called Crane laughed and spit.
"I ain't moving,"
Harrison whispered, turning his head to look away.
"Go on and shoot me right here." "All three of them are somebody's slaves,"
the man with the sharp eyes said loud.
"I know 3 runaway slaves when I see them. Probably $1,000 sitting right there."
I knew dirt when I saw it, too. The 2 men who had caught us were dirt. That's what I said in my mind. The constable heaved a sigh and tapped one of the loose planks with his boot. There were people circled around us now, I could tell, and they were all quiet. Seemed like even the air was holding its breath, waiting.
"Sure they ain't got free papers put away somewhere?"
the constable said slowly, clearing his throat.
You asked them? They got nothing but their black skin, the man called Crane snorted. And it ain't free. Anybody with eyes can see that.
The constable sighed again and looked down at us, frowning.
Well, now, he said. Well.
I saw the same thing I had seen before in his eyes, a flicker of something.
Look for weakness and plan a way out,
the riverman had said. I tried my one thought, cast it up into the sky just to see what would happen. We got free papers, I said. Truth is, we've been free more than a year. The two men who had caught us laughed loud, spit and laughed.
Listen to the boy. Listen to him go on.
The people standing around us started whispering and buzzing among themselves. Sounded like bees. Sounded like a whole nest of bees. The constable grew more of a frown.
All right, he said. Untie them and let me see the papers he's talking about. Ain't no papers, the sharp-eyed man snapped. Untie them.
They took their time untying the rope around our feet and pulled us up to sitting, mean as they could. I looked over at Orty Lee hunched over beside me. He had his eyes closed. Blood and tears were dried all down his cheeks. It's in his coat, I said to the constable. He keeps our papers folded up in his coat. Leaning over, the constable searched through Orty Lee's old coat himself, pulled out a leaf of tobacco, an apple core, a half-burnt candle from the railroad, and the square of paper.
Miss it?
He held up Orty Lee's precious paper, and Orty Lee turned his head and fixed me with a stare mean enough to turn bones to powder. Figured I was bringing more trouble, probably.
That ain't nothing,
Orty Lee said real low.
Ain't nothing.
In my mind, I saw Green Murdoch holding up those fancy Willowware bowls and telling us how he had tricked an old woman into buying them. I thought about the fine smoked ham and the new tow linen shirt that wasn't new at all. And I looked straight at that constable and told a lie as smooth as Green Murdoch himself. Yes, sir, I said loud. You got our free papers. Harrison turned his head and whispered, Hush, Samuel.
You awful smart for being the color you are, boy, the man with the flint eyes hissed. I hope you know who you are talking to.
Looking up at him and thinking of Master Hackler, I felt the snake squeeze around my throat. Clumsy and impatient, the constable tore the paper as he opened it.
Just tear the whole thing to pieces, one of the men laughed. We won't tell a soul.
Probably no one but Orty Lee, me, and Harrison saw the 3 curls of hair slip out of the paper folds and drift away on the wind. Nancy, Isaiah, and Moses. A shiver went clear through me. If anyone found out he had tried to kill a white man because of them, we would all be dead. The constable held the paper open. Just an old scrap Orty Lee had stolen from a book or a letter. He glanced down at it and over at me, a flicker in his eyes. The people on the dock moved closer, waiting. The whole line of black folks in my mind stood at a hush.
What does it say? The sharp-eyed man pushed. They free or not?
The constable folded the paper carefully, square by square, and gave it back to me.
What do you think? He said, keeping his eyes down. Says they're free.
Keep your eye on the sun. On the same morning that we got free from the docks and rolled our flour barrels toward the Otter, my mama was sitting in Chatham, Canada, at her little kitchen table. I looked up, she told me later, and plain as day I saw you through my kitchen window. 3 boys were playing in the street, laughing and running, and one of them was you. I said to myself, that is exactly what my Samuel looks like right now. And that's when I knew you were coming, sure as anything. In my mind, I knew. But we didn't know any of that. As we got up real slow from the docks, the constable untied our hands and told us to get busy with our work, or he would find something worse for us to do. So Harrison put his hands next to mine on the flour barrel, and I could see all of his fingers trembling like leaves. And Orty Lee set his big knuckled hands on his flour barrel, and we started rolling those barrels down the dock. Seemed like everyone had their eyes on us, watching. They stepped back to let us pass. Parted like the Red Sea, Lily would have said. The soft thump of the barrels and the white birds calling overhead filled the air around us.
Walk as if you have the perfect right to do so. You slave or free?
Free.
Then walk like it. Walk.
I put my shoulders back a little, lifted up my head, and took a quick sideways glance at everything around us. I saw the big sailboats lining the docks, one after the other, and I saw people stopping in the middle of their work to stare at us. And in the spaces in between, I saw green-blue water, just like Lily had said, water that stretched all the way to the sky.
"Flour goes on the Otter, over there,"
someone called out to us. We rolled the barrels up a long plank to a boat that was the size of a house, maybe 2 houses. "We free?" Orderly whispered. "This mean we free?" All around us, men tugged at curls of ropes and lines. The Otter swayed underneath our feet. Seemed like everything around us was being set free. Me and Harrison and Ordy Lee stood where we were, not saying a word. Just stood on the deck and looked up, as if our eyes and mouths were stuck. Over our heads, the canvas sails of the Otter unrolled like warm summer clouds. And if we could have seen our future unfolding in those big sails, like my mama saw the future in her mind, we would have known what was going to happen to each of us in freedom. We would have known that Ordy Lee would become a blacksmith, the finest blacksmith in Chatham, Canada. He would call himself Isaiah Moses after his 2 sons. And although he would never see his family again, he would often bring us gifts of food and money, even a real horse once. "Can't ever give enough," he would say, "for what Samuel done." When Harrison got to Canada, he would find ponds scattered like seeds through the forests and fields around Chatham. He would choose one of his own to sit beside, and he would fish day after day until we all took to running from him whenever he brought home another stringer of pond fish for supper. If you ask anyone around Chatham today, they can still point you to Harrison's Pond, and it's always full of fish, right down to the very bottom. And when I got to Chatham, I would find my own mama sitting at her kitchen table waiting for us. She would have extra places set because she knew we were coming. Today or tomorrow or sometime. And when we walked through the door of her house, we would hear, sure as the whole town, no, the whole country of Canada heard, that Harrison was her daddy and I was her long-lost son. Only person we would never have in freedom was Lily. Lily stayed with her children in the little Negro burying ground on Master Hackler's land. "She's never gonna leave," Harrison said, "'cause that's where her family is." Each year she would send a Christmas dollar to me, wrapped in a torn-out page from her Bible, and I saved all 6 of them. But truth is, we didn't know any of these things, not about Ordy Lee or Harrison or my mama or Lily or what was going to happen to us in freedom at all. As we stood on the deck of the Otter that morning, we just stared at the white sails soaring in the endless morning sun. "Samuel," Harrison said, grinning at me, "we done it." He waved his arms, turning and spinning in the wind. "Woo-wee, Samuel," he hollered and waved. "Look up. Look up at this beautiful, free sky." Keep your eye on the sun. See how she run. Don't let her catch you with your work undone. I'm a trouble. I'm a trouble. Trouble don't last always. Virginia Slave Song. The end. This is Ron.